Episode 16 of the Brandon Mulholland podcast will discuss why I read and why am I so invested and immersed in so many books. And I think I get people a lot saying, Brandon, why do you read all the time? Like, Brandon, why, even when you're just kind of chilling out, why do you read? Why do you read like any kind of situation that you can? And I think essentially, I started a goal at the start of the first COVID lockdown that I wanted to get into reading because I used to read loads as a child. And then as soon as I kind of hit my teenage years, kind of like maybe 14, 15, I kind of started kind of being more social and kind of got invested more in social media. And I didn't really care for books all that much. And then I kind of got back into it then when I became 22, 23. And I think as well, I felt like when I was just kind of exposed to technology all the time, I just had a bit of a brain fog. I had no kind of real sense of direction, or I didn't really know how the world really worked until I started reading books. And I honestly think today I've learned so much from reading books that my intelligence has at least gone up by about 50%. And it's kind of helped me become more empathetic, a lot more patient, a lot more understanding of why things are the way they are. But in fairness, it is difficult to pick up a 400-page book when it's so much easier to, you know, watch TV or watch a YouTube video or go on your phone, which is it's the effect of, it's just easier to go on your phone than it is to read a book. That's why a lot of people will more likely go towards the edge of technology more so than reading a book, because it's so much harder to pick up a book and sit down and read for half an hour and kind of invest yourself in it, because it requires your brain just to think and not aimlessly scroll on social media or aimlessly just watch something that'll give you a dopamine spike, while the book will require you to focus and take in what it's trying to tell you. But as well as that, I don't really read audiobook. I don't really take in audiobooks all that much, because I just find audiobooks that you find out as a distraction to easy go on your phone, or you can find yourself very distracted and not really taking in what the person's saying to you when an audiobook. That's just because you find it so, when you're walking around, when you're listening to a YouTube video or a song, you don't really take in what the person's saying, or when you're walking around with a podcast while you're doing other things. So that's why I just find I like to sit down, just dedicate, at least 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day just to read a few pages and then just soak in what the material is saying. And just really you can either highlight it, you can make a note of it. If you miss it on an audiobook, you just kind of scroll back or whatever it is needs to be done. But essentially, the main benefits that I found, I did find it kind of, I wouldn't really say motivating. I just kind of felt like I knew for my own self that I felt like it'd be better for me personally. It's I don't really read much fiction. I kind of read more business or human psychology books. I wouldn't really be too into self-help books and all that, just because I feel like a lot of them kind of repeat themselves, and kind of, it's if you don't really act on self-help books, they're not really that beneficial. You may as well be reading a fictional story or something like that. But essentially, one of the main benefits that I found from reading books is that I've gained a lot more intelligence in my everyday learning. I find every time I read, I learn something new, and you kind of build upon this as you kind of keep reading. At first, when you start reading, it's kind of hard to concentrate and take in what you're saying, but kind of the more you read, the more it's like a muscle for you to train. So it's the more you say the more you work out in the gym, the stronger you're going to get over time. It's reading, the more you invest yourself in reading, and as the more you dedicate yourself to it, you will get stronger, 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 and you'll get more bang for your buck with it. But I feel as well that if you want to become more productive, a book by someone to study by probably 20 years, or it will help you change your habits. So it kind of exercises your brain, as I once said. So you're basically building up that muscle, you're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I also find that reading as well, it helps you improve your focus, a bit like meditating. So being able to concentrate and focus for long periods of time is essential to success and well-being. In the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, I remember a quote saying, It's the deep work is the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. It's a skill that allows you to quickly master complicated information and produce better results in less time. So that book, for example, is about like, yeah, most people can work hard and most people, they're very hardworking, but once you kind of get yourself deep and like immersed in a task, it's so like you'd be surprised how much like working hard and like get to a deep flow or like a flow state of work are two different things. So that's what the book can be person I say. So basically it allows for more. I just find like even with reading now these days, like even when I'm working like just every day in just by my laptop, or if I'm like trying to study something, or if I'm trying to like take in something, or if I'm trying to just go for a walk or come to, I don't find myself as easily distracted from what I'm doing. I think just things from the habit of me reading and kind of just focus to dedicating like 20-30 minutes to read like every day. And I feel like as well that just carries over to other activities that I'm doing. And I also find that reading, it improves your memory. So I used to have a bad habit of just forgetting things or having a bunch of to-do lists, and I just can't like remember what's on them. But I feel like since I started reading, I can definitely see how my memory has improved. Especially when I read like a non-fiction book, like I can consume like so much information on the subject I'm reading about, which is why when it's like fiction books, I can find myself to get into a flow state a bit easier, but it does take a real like kind of, it takes that little bit extra work to get into a flow state for non-fiction. So like similarly, when you have to like read a novel, you have to remember like tons of information about the story's plot and subplots, the characters and the relationships and the environment which the story takes place. Like that's like a lot of information. So all of this information creates new memories, and every new memory creates synapses or strengthens old ones. So the upside of this is reading every day can improve your memory, and it can help you learn how to store the information and recall memories more effectively. I also find with reading as well that books like provide some of the most entertaining entertainment of the planet. Like you can basically like use your mind and use like your imagination to create the story or create the scenario for yourself. Like, have you ever read a book that you just can't put down? Like, you feel so invested in the chapter or the story is that like what we're learning. But you keep reading what you needed to like if you were like say hungry or in the bathroom, like you want to read anyway, like, no matter what you were doing. It's like if you're playing like a game on your phone, or if you're going for a run, like you're so like in the moment where you just kind of want to just go at a head on. But there are lots of books like you don't need to like stick to one genre. Like there is so many different types of dramas. Like basically, there's a book for like everything there is. Like any sort of drama, like you name it. Like there's, you have your teen fiction, you have your spiritual books, you have your health books, you have your food books, you have your psychology books, you have your business books. Like there's so many like kind of topics that I find there's a book out for you there somewhere. Like even if it's like 40 pages or it's 400 pages, like as long as the book's good, like you will definitely find yourself like. Even I find as well, I sometimes tell people like if you want to really struggle hard to read, it's best to read a book called The Daily Laws by Robert Greene or The Daily Stoic by Ron Holiday. Because in them books, you just have to read one page a day because like it's one page for every day throughout the year. And then if you read that kind of books like just one page, one page, one page, eventually try going to 2 pages and 2 pages and then eventually kind of build yourself and create habits of reading more pages and set yourself kind of little small goals and small wins. I definitely think as well, if you don't want to read them books, you should try like maybe read a book that's like around 100 pages, like 200 pages, maybe at a push if you can do it. Like some books I'd recommend would be The Alchemist and Ikagi. And there's a few. I'm trying to think. I can't be in the moment now. A few small books. It's Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck as well. It's a very easy book to read by Mark Manson. It's like less than 200 pages. And then like another benefit I primarily found with reading is I think I mentioned this briefly, but I'll go into a bit more. So I started reading, like, meditating and all that kind of stuff, I definitely found it more easy to empathize with other people. So one of the benefits of reading books that like we can improve our ability to empathize with others, and empathy has benefits, so we can reduce stress, improve our relationships, and inform our moral compasses. And people ask how. So there has been studies showing, like, if you look, like, mostly when people like authors say, there's a study, or this is like, there's been scientific studies, like, it's usually in the appendix of the back of a book, but it's been shown that long-term fiction readers tend to develop a better theory of mind, the term used to describe our capacity for empathy and ability to understand others. And another study found that when we read stories that explore characters in their lives and emotions, our ability to understand others' feelings and views improves, which is why I feel like if you read like Harry Potter books when you're younger, or like any of them, you'd have a lot more of a understanding of kind of the person's life. That's why I often find autobiographies are also very good books to read, because you can really, like, I know people that can read a lot kind of the non-fiction self-help books like that. Often find as well that the autobiographies are a brilliant read, just because you can actually see a person's life from, they're kind of explaining what their line of sight is, and you can kind of get a dip into that and see, like, oh, this is how, like, people dealt with certain experience. Like, I actually do find it very interesting, in my opinion. I often find as well with reading that I think I've become more confident and a better communicator. Like, okay, I'm still a little bit kind of shy every now and then, but I think in talking to people in general, I've definitely become more, like, a lot more interested in what they have to say. I'm a lot more kind of, I know how to present myself in a better light. So while, like, I am please everybody in the world, it's also, I can also give more of a better impression to people more frequently than I could in the past. Like, I find like I have a lot more to talk about when it comes to just general chit chat, or like general kind of like emotions, or how people are feeling, or like I can kind of, I can relate more to a situation. I feel like ever since I started reading books, like, in fact, there's one study I discovered, like, I remember reading that 67% of employers are looking to hire people with soft skills, such as effective communication, which makes sense because, you don't want to be hired for a job and you're like a brick, you know what I mean? You need to have like some sort of outgoing personality, which I think as well is why, like, most companies, or I find anyway at work, like, even if you're not even like that intelligent, like, you will, like, as long as you're just like, you're friendly and you're outgoing and you're kind of enthusiastic, like, you'll kind of be more hired on that, rather than someone who's just like a genius, but like, they're not going to be, they're not going to like provide any kind of, good feeling towards the people above them. As well as that, I find as well, like, I think, I don't know if it's as a coincidence, but I often found that, I know this is due to meditating or reading, or maybe both, maybe a bit of both, but I really do not feel stressed about any situation anymore. Like, I used to be really bad with stress. I'd be sitting there with a heart rate like over 100, like panicking over certain situations. But I feel like now, I've read so many books where kind of like it discusses, it's like what's going to happen, like, you know what I mean, like, we say, I don't even want to give an example. Like, say there was, say if you, I don't know, there's a major like kind of crash in the economy, like, you kind of got to look at the good side. Like, you can always, like, every negative, like, it's so much, like I said earlier on, like, kind of go on your phone and book, it's so much easier to be negative than it is positive. And I just feel like it's so much easier to be negative and swing towards that, because you kind of get more of, it's difficult to be positive because it takes effort. It's like, it's hard to give yourself credit, but being negative is so easy because you just have that kind of like, not feel good effect, but you kind of have that like, oh, I feel like I'm kind of above that situation, or this, you're kind of like the victim of the situation, where you don't want to be like, oh, this doesn't deserve to happen to me. Like, I'm better than this. The world's so unfair, but it's like, you can basically, you can flip that situation around and say, okay, so the economy's crashed. I can take this time to, I don't know, invest, or kind of learn more about like how to overcome a situation like this. Like, the book The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. This basically there's a quote from that where it says the path that's the obstacle is now the new path, which basically it means that your new obstacle that you found, that's the new path you're on. So you're walking a straight path, and then the obstacle comes in the way. That new obstacle is now your new path. So in essence, it means the more like whenever life throws a curveball at you, you go with the curveball. So you gotta like adapt and adjust. That's why the human brain is so powerful. We can readjust and adapt to our situation, no matter what we're in. And then I often feel as well, I don't like if I think that if that's happened to me, I wouldn't be anywhere stressed as I used to be in the world. Like what will be or what will be. The worst thing that's gonna happen, is never really the worst thing that will happen. And that's kind of what I learned from over the years of reading books. So like the next time you're feeling stressed, like remember like the benefits of like reading for pleasure, and let the tension like kind of just melt away. And as well, reading kind of any sort of book will improve your mental health, because it does, like there has been studies that affect the effects of like kind of non-fiction self-help books, and found that many have a measurable impact on depression and other mood disorders. Um, like I do feel, on a mental note, I kind of just, it's kind of like a piggyback onto the other things I'm saying. So where I don't feel as stressed, which in turn leads to better kind of mental health, and like, my sleep's better, my eating's better, like, my overall physical health is better. Um, like my communication skills are better. So, a lot more kind of like confident in myself and how to speak to people. So it kind of does like, which again leads to like good mental health, because, you have that kind of bit of confidence to improve yourself in a way which again improves your mental health. So like your small wins that you make. So like before, I'd be afraid to talk to people. Now if I talk to people, I kind of like give myself kind of like a small pat in the back, because I know that I did something that I used to be scared of before, which I can overcome now, which shows like that you're growing as a person, that you're getting braver, and then you kind of just gotta aim for higher and higher and higher after that. And then the I don't know, last benefit of reading I've experienced is living longer. Like, not that I probably will live. I don't know if I'll live any longer because of reading, but I feel like, just again, like, when you're in a good mental state, like the main reason why people pass away earlier in life is because primarily to poor mental health or poor stress. And like when you're so stressed, it really does take an impact on everything physically, with like your sleep, your kind of your heart function, like your raised cortisol levels, etc., etc. And I often feel as well, I think like if I read, like it's, you can never have the saying, you can never be too smart. So I definitely feel that when I'm reading, I'm in a good kind of good flow state. I'm in like a good, like, I feel a lot better after I read, rather than if I was like an hour on my phone. I definitely feel not as tired. I wouldn't feel as sluggish. But when I read outside in the air, in nature, I definitely feel a lot more like awake and present. Not woke per se, but I definitely feel a lot more like engaged with my environment around me, rather than me kind of just like, where I might have a lot of brain fog and I'm on my phone. God knows what, like these days, what I'm doing on my phone. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have to read about reading. But I definitely feel like overall, to summarize, like it's good for, improves my focus, my memory, my empathy, my communication skills. It reduces your mental health, or improves your mental health, reduces your stress, helps you live longer. It also allows you to learn new things and help you succeed in work and relationships. And I definitely find that like my relationships, well, I don't know if people will say the same thing, but I definitely feel like I have improved kind of like I've improved kind of like the strength of my relationships, whether it's like with my friends, my family, or anything like that. And yeah, and I just think as well, like, if you're kind of like lost and looking for your kind of sense of purpose, reading is a really good place to start. I definitely find that just over the 3 years I've been reading, like I'll definitely be continuing. Like there is a thing where you do hit a wall with reading, and I definitely hit that a few times, where like I'm still like I do struggle to say if I had a goal of reading for 30 minutes, like sometimes at a wall and I struggle to read for 10 minutes. That's kind of like what I can say to that is if you ever do hit a reading wall, just like minimize the time of reading. Like say if you read for normally an hour a day, read for like 5 minutes. And what if you really hate it that much, just stop after as soon as you hit 5 minutes, just put the book down. But more or less of the time, like once you kind of get into the state of like being immersed in it, you will keep going. It's like if I was saying if I was going to the gym and I really didn't want to go today, like I really, really like I was too tired, I was too hungry, I was too stressed at work, or whatever it is, I just didn't want to go. Just go for 20 minutes and just for a minute, like set your timer on, go for 20 minutes. Most of the time, after you set for 20 minutes, you more than likely, like, because, once you kind of have the endorphins going, you will more than likely stay past 20 minutes and hit the hour, and you never know, you might feel better after it. But like, just, it's kind of like the hardest part about anything is just kind of starting it. And that's why I kind of learned, that's a big lesson I learned over the years, even when it's like a boxing match or, going to the gym or starting a book, going for a walk, and cleaning up the house, anything like that. Like I just find the hardest thing is just to start. I mean, once you start, you're kind of just you're go go go. Which it's kind of even if you gave yourself 20 minutes, you'd feel better after it. I know I'm kind of waffling on here about books, but yeah, I definitely feel like you kind of you found your own sense of purpose when you read after a while. Like for a while, you do kind of when you don't read and like you're just kind of all you have to do is go on your phone or use technology, is kind of feel like you have that kind of like, what am I doing in my life kind of thing. Like, but when you read, you kind of like you rediscover like, oh, this is how to find the true meaning of what you're meant to be. Like you can fulfill your potential by like reading books and like acting upon the books. And even if you read a book and you can't concentrate on it, like just write notes after the chapter just to say like what I learned, what was my takeaway, how can I apply this to a real life situation. And you'd be actually surprised by how much growth that you've like overcome. So say if you read what was the last book I read? How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. So that's probably a pretty famous book. Everyone raves about it now. It's like the top books of the world. Like I've seen loads of like people on YouTube raving about it, like loads of people that I know rave about it. And basically Dale Carnegie talks about where we don't criticize people. So when you meet someone new, like you don't like criticize them because you don't want to give that negative impression straight away, because they'll probably more than likely not go be around your kind of energy circle. And talking to people about their interests, because people to talk about themselves all the time. And I think like the less, like when you talk to people about like what you're doing, most of the time people really won't care. They want to like talk about themselves more than anything. So to really like get into someone's like kind of friend group or whatever, try like get them to talk about as much of themselves as they can and ask them loads of questions. That's kind of like what I learned from them books. But like with that book specifically, but before that, I would have known that. I would have been like talking about myself all day, not really cared about what anyone else has to say, but it's kind of like improves your kind of listening in that way. And that's just one take from the book that I read. And then just, yeah, I don't want to ramble on too much, but that's, yeah, like, I know I kind of, usually in my podcast, I just wing it. I don't really have a set kind of structure notes. And I really should improve that, because it's probably one of my weaknesses when it comes to podcasts. I probably read a book on how to like present a good podcast pretty well. That's probably, ironically, it's probably a book I haven't read yet. But I think that's kind of it. 24 minutes. Yeah, I don't want to ramble on too much. I like to keep my podcast around 20-30 minutes. But I think one of the main issues I've had, and I know I read so many books about habits and all that, but I can't for some reason just seem to get a flow going of doing podcasts like every week. And I just don't know why. I just feel, like I said, the hardest thing about doing podcasts is just basically getting started on it. I definitely find like just once I get into it, I'm fine and I don't mess with my words. I do have a few pauses and I'm like, a bit like, oh, I'm a bit perfectionist, so it kind of annoys me after. But I definitely find the hardest part about a podcast is definitely starting it. And then once I kind of get the first minute into it, I'm kind of like good, and I'm in a nice flow. Like I'm talking now, but like with the first couple of minutes, I'm a little bit nervous and I don't really know what to say. So I think the more practice I get, the better with that. And yeah, I know I keep rambling on and on and on. But yeah, I will call it a day there because I just don't want, I don't want, you ever hear the law of diminishing returns where like, it's like junk volume, like the more you say, the not more quality it is. But I will call it there for the day or the week or the month or whenever I'll do the next podcast again. It's so unpredictable, I couldn't even tell you when it's going to be. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, and until next time.